Okay, for Algebra 9.6, we are finally learning the quadratic formula. So this is a really big formula. It's going to be really important that you guys know it, especially for Algebra 2. And so therefore, I have turned it into, I didn't turn it into, I wish I could claim it, but it is a song. That's right, this lovely long formula is actually sung to the tune of Pop Goes the Weasel. So, lucky for you, I will sing it for you, and I'm sure I will never hear the end of it, and that's okay, because when Algebra 2 rolls around and you are happy that this little tune pops back into your head, you will have me to thank for you. So, here you go. Or skip fast forward through my singing. That's okay too, it won't hurt my feelings. You still need to memorize this. Okay, so here's the song, and yes, you're gonna have to sing it later too. X equals opposite b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. All right, I hope you got it. That's the best I can do. So x equals opposite b, and notice that's a negative, but I'm going to call it opposite because I think it will help you remember that if it ends up being a positive 4, it's negative because that's opposite, or if it already was negative, it's going to end up being positive because that's opposite. So x equals opposite b plus or minus, and we'll talk about what that's going to look like here in a minute after we solve some of them, the square root of b squared minus 4ac all divided by, so all over 2 times a. Okay, that's a big formula. It's really important, but the reason that we learn this formula is because sometimes when you're solving a quadratic equation, trying to find the roots or the solutions, the two places that it passes through the x-axis, sometimes you can't factor it. Like if we tried to factor this, x squared minus 2x minus 8 equals 0, there's nothing in the world you can come up with that when you multiply you'd get 8, and when you add or subtract you get 2. So wait, 4 and 2. 4 and 2. Okay, so this one worked. Okay, it's a bad example. It's fine. There are some though, and actually we're going to find them, that come out crazy decimals. And when they come out crazy decimals, they weren't factorable, like this one actually is. So in that case, we move on to the quadratic formula. Okay, fine. I'll sing it one more time. It's going to stick in your head. X equals opposite b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. So get used to that song. Start singing it. Go ahead. And the reason that you're going to love this formula is because all the numbers are actually there for you. You're just going to plug them in and use your calculator. So the a, see this little a that happens twice? That is the number that's in the a's term. So in this case, it would be 2. So the first number next to the x squared is your a term. So they're going to plug in a 2 for this a. Yes, they did. And for this a down here. Yes, they did. The b that you see here, the opposite b, is whatever term is in the b's position. So if you look at this equation, the b term is positive 3. So if it's opposite b, they have made it negative 3. They have also had b squared here, so that's going to be 3 squared. And that's the only other time you use b. And then your c term, the number that's in the c's position, the c term is negative 5. So anytime you would see a c in this equation, like right here, you're going to plug in negative 5. Okay, so they did this one all for you, and it turned out nice and neat, and apparently you could have factored it, but you can always also use the quadratic formula too. It works every time, no matter what, even if it doesn't factor. So here we're going to go all the way down to the you try. So what I want you to notice first is it has to equal 0, and it doesn't. So we are going to have to move the 21 to the other side by subtracting it from both sides so that we have it equal to 0, because these will cancel out, and now it will be equal to 0. So our new formula is x squared minus 4x, and now minus 21 equals 0. Here's what I would do if I were you. Off to the side, I would write what is a, what is B, and what is C? Because when you do this, that's going to help you when you're singing your lovely little song to be able to fill in what the numbers are going to be that you need to fill in. So your A term is what's in front of the x squared. It's hidden invisible 1. So the A term is 1. The B term is what's in front of just the x. So that is -4. And the C term is the constant. It comes by itself with no x's attached. It's -21. All right, so it says use the quadratic formula, which now you have memorized because I have now sung it twice for you. So we are going to do x equals opposite b. Okay, opposite b. So opposite -4 is going to be +4 plus or minus the square root of b squared, so -4 squared, b squared minus 4ac. A and c multiplied together. So a is 1, c is -21. The square root's over that whole thing. All over 2a. A is 1. Okay, so if you are good at just plugging numbers into your calculator, you're going to love quadratic formula. There's no reason for you to have failed this if you can just follow instructions. Order of operations, though, every time. So 4, we're just going to leave 4. Plus or minus, I'll get to that. Square root, let's do all of this stuff first. -4 squared, what that means is -4 times -4. Negative times negative is +16. So that's going to be 16 minus, these can all get multiplied together. So that's technically -4 times 1 times -21. And I'm just going to go ahead and use my calculator because I don't know. So -4 times 1 times -21 is +84. So instead of minus, we're going to actually put plus 84 all over 2a. 2 times a, 2 times 1 is 2. Okay, let's keep going one step further. 4 plus or minus the square root of whatever 16 plus 84 is. By the way, you cannot go ahead and do 16 minus 4 and then times this and then times this. You have to do order of operations. So you have to do squares first and then multiply, and now we can go add or subtract. Last is adding and subtracting. So 16 plus 84. 16 plus 84 is 100 all over 2, because 2a is 2. Okay, let's keep going one step further. Actually, I've run out of room, so I'm going to go to the top of the next column. So what we have so far is 4 plus or minus the square root of 100 over 2. All right, the square root of 100, that actually comes out evenly. It's a number times itself that equals 100. If you have a calculator like mine, you're going to use the square root button, which is above the x squared. So you're going to have to shift this to get it to the one above. And for me, shift is this second button up here. So I'm going to push second and then this square root above square root button, and it turns out like that. 100 equals 10. Of course it does, because 10 times 10 is 100. So the square root of 100 is 10. So what we're going to have is 4 plus or minus 10 divided by 2. Okay, here's where we can branch it off into two separate problems. I need plus and minus to be two different answers. I need one where you use plus and one where you use minus. So I'm going to say 4 plus 10 divided by 2 and 4 minus 10 divided by 2. So that's where the plus or minus comes in. We need to do one of each. We need to do one plus and one minus. All right, 4 plus 10 is 14 divided by 2. 4 minus 10 is negative 6 divided by 2. 14 divided by 2 is 7. Negative 6 divided by 2 is negative 3. So my two answers, my two roots, if I were graphing this on a parabola, would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and negative 3. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, yeah. So it's going to look something like this, and I don't really, oops, and I don't really care because we're not actually graphing it. I just want you to remember what we're finding. We're finding the roots of our parabola, where they would cross the x-axis. Okay, so that whole big problem to find two places where they cross the graph. All right, the next thing I want to show you, we don't need to practice that a million times because it's just plugging in numbers and solving the formula and doing plus and minus. But the next thing I want to show you is the discriminant. The discriminant is only the section that is the square root of b squared minus 4ac. It's just this section of the quadratic formula. So once you get the square root of whatever this is, it's going to tell us some important information. So we got it down to where the square root of 100 was 10, right? The square root of 100 was 10. So if we got it down to where the answer for the discriminant was 10, that is positive. A positive discriminant means there will be two answers. There will be a place it hits here and here. If you get it down to where the discriminant comes out to be exactly 0, then that means there is only exactly one solution where your parabola would hit the x-axis. And if you get it to where the square root is negative, well, I hope you remember, if the square root is less than 0, if it's negative, that's not possible. There's no number that you can multiply. Here, I'll make it like that. There's no number you can multiply to it by itself that will be a negative. 10 times 10 is positive 10. Negative 10 times negative 10 is positive. I just said 10. Let me start over. 10 times 10 is 100. Negative 10 times negative 10 is positive 100. So this is not possible. So when you get it down to where there's a square root of a negative, that's an imaginary number. It's not possible. So what that means on a parabola is that it will never hit the x-axis. There are no solutions here. See how it never hits? There's still a parabola. It just does not hit any x-axis. So this part of the quadratic formula, the square root of b squared minus 4ac, tells us some important information. Whatever you get when you do just this section is going to tell us whether there's going to be two solutions, one solution, or no solutions. So knowing that we got the discriminant to be the square root of 100, which is 10, that's a positive. That tells us there was going to be two answers. So when you look at your next page, the next page is actually all about the discriminant, and I basically just told you how to do this. But if it's bigger than 0, like we got 10, we know there's going to be two solutions, okay? If it is exactly 0, if when you solve it, it's the square root of something minus itself and you get 0, then that means there is going to be exactly one solution. And if you get it down to where it's a negative answer, if it's less than 0, which means negative, for example, negative 8, that means there's no solutions. The parabola will not touch the x-axis anywhere. No solution, no real solutions. They're imaginary solutions, okay, which you'll get into more in Algebra 2. Okay, so without solving the whole big quadratic formula, all I want you to do is the discriminant. So let's write off to the side what our A is, what our B is, and what our C is so that we can use the discriminant. Actually, you know what? Do we even need the C? Because the discriminant, oh yeah, A, C, B, yeah. We need all of them, just kidding. Okay, the A term is what's in front of x squared. That would be 2. The B term is what's in front of x, which is negative 3. And the C term, this is not set equal to 0. We need to move it over, so it's negative 5 currently. When I move it to the other side, it's going to be positive 5. Okay, I hope that makes sense. I didn't work it out. So the discriminant, again, is the square root of b squared minus 4ac, just that section. So let's do it. B is negative 3 squared. Negative 3 squared. Minus 4 times A, which is 2, times C, which is 5. All right, solve it. Negative 3 squared is 9. 4 times 2 times 5, technically negative 4 times 2 times 5 is 40, I believe, negative 40. And look what happens. What is 9 minus 40? It is negative 31. You can't have a negative. So right away, now that I know it's negative, there are going to be no solutions. Again, that does not mean there's no parabola. It just means it doesn't touch the x-axis. So just by using this section, the discriminant section of the quadratic formula, you can tell what the graph is going to end up looking like. Okay, let's do one more of those. So my A is, my B is, my C is. A is going to be 6. B is going to be -5. C, once I move it, you have to move it. It has to be equal to 0 first. It's going to be -7 because I have to subtract 7 to get it to move to the other side. So it's -7. Okay, so we're going to write the discriminant, which is b squared minus 4ac, the square root of b squared minus 4ac, and then we're just going to start filling numbers in. B is -5, so that means -5 squared minus 4 times a, which is 6, times c, which is -7. All right, let's just start working it out. -5 times -5 is positive 25. -4 times 6 times -7, I don't know. -4 times 6 times -7 is 168. So it's going to be plus, because it's a positive, 168. All right, let's add those together. 125 plus 168. Just 25, sorry. 25 plus 168 is 193. So this is a positive. So since this number is positive, I know that it is going to be 2 solutions. Okay, it's going to be plus or minus whatever the square root of 193 is. All right, let's move on to our last little bit, which is our lesson review. We get to do the quadratic formula twice and tell how many solutions this is going to have based on the discriminant. So let's just start in. Number 1, this is going to take up some room, so write tiny on these. So number 1, I'm going to write what my A, B, and C are. My A is -3. My B is -11. My C is 4. Okay, get ready to sing. See, this is why it's good to have this memorized. So it's X equals opposite B. So my B currently is -11, so opposite of -11 is going to be positive 11. Plus or minus the square root of B squared, so -11 squared, minus 4AC. A is -3, C is 4, all over 2A. A is -3. Okay, see, didn't even have to refer to the formula because I was singing it. You're going to be singing it too. Okay, so now we're just going to solve this whole lovely thing. So we still have 11 plus or minus. -11 squared is 121. I think 11 times 11 is 121, and that's negative times negative, so it's positive. -4 times -3 is 12, times 4 is 48, so plus 48. Double check with your calculator. I think that's right. 2 times -3 is -6. We're getting there, slowly but surely. 11 plus or minus whatever 121 plus 48 is. 121 plus 48 is 169. And by the way, that comes out evenly, which I like, because if you know your square roots, you know that's, I think, 13. Maybe. Watch it not be. Okay. 11 plus or minus the square root of 169. And in order to do that, you have to shift it on my calculator and then push this one, which will bring up the square root. 169 is 13. 13 times 13. So 13 divided by -6. Okay, this is where you branch it off into 2 problems. One is going to be plus and one is going to be minus. So I'm going to find a little space over here, and I'm going to do 11 plus 13 divided by -6 and 11 minus 13 divided by -6. So I need 1 plus and 1 minus. 11 plus 13 is 24 divided by -6, which is -4. And then 11 minus 13, that's -2 divided by -6, which that is just 1/3. Negative divided by negative is positive. So those are my 2 answers. It would hit the graph at -4 and positive 1/3. And we knew there was going to be 2 answers because our discriminant was positive. All right. Took a long time to do one problem. That's why having the formula memorized in a little song is helpful. All right, let's move on to 2. My A is 7. I'll do it up here. My A is 7. My b is -2. And my c is actually going to be -8 because I have to subtract it over to the other side. So c is going to be -8. All right. Pop Goes the Weasel is the theme of the song. So it is x equals opposite b. Opposite of -2 is +2. Plus or minus the square root of b squared, so -2 squared, b squared minus 4ac. A is 7, c is -8, all over 2a. A is 7. Okay, all I did was write out that formula, singing that song, plugging in those numbers. Now we get to solve it. So here we go. X equals 2 plus or minus the square root of, that's going to be 4. 4 times 7 times 8, technically -4 times 7 times -8. I know this negative times this negative is going to be a plus. 4 times 7 times 8, I don't know what that is. 4 times 7 times 8 is 224. All over 14. 2 times 7 is 14. All right, so let's keep going one step further. 2 plus or minus 224 plus 4 is 228. This is a positive discriminant, so I know I'm going to have two answers. Okay, and those two answers are going to get branched off right here. I'm going to do 2 plus, I don't know what the square root of 228 is. I don't think it comes out evenly. Let's check. Square root of 228 does not come out evenly. So for right now, I'm just going to keep it the square root of 228 because we're going to have to get some crazy decimals. And I just want to branch these off first before we get there. So 228 divided by 14. Okay, see what I've done is I've done 2 plus the square root of this over 14 and 2 minus the square root of this over 14. So here's what I meant by if this doesn't come out evenly, we're just going to put it in our calculator exactly like that. So I'm going to type in 2 plus the square root of 228 equals divided by 14. All right, 2 plus the square root of 228 equals divided by 14. And we're going to round it to the nearest, let's say 10th. So I'm going to put 1.2. So this one is about, this little squiggly equals means about 1.2. And now I'm going to do it where I subtract. So now I'm going to do 2 minus the square root of 228 divided by 14. So that is negative 0.9. Negative 0.9. About negative 0.9. So those are the reasons we have a formula, because I would never have been able to factor to get those crazy long irrational decimals. All right, and then the very last question we have, which I'm almost out of room for, is just using the discriminant. So how many solutions are these going to have? And remember, the discriminant is only the square root of b squared minus 4ac part. So let's write down what our a is. Okay, hold on. Oops, didn't mean to do that. This part. Okay, our a is -2. So a, -2. B is 8. C is -5. So all we're going to write is the square root of 8 squared minus 4 times a, which is -2, times c, which is -5. And all we need to do is figure out if this is positive, 0, or negative. So 8 squared is 64. -4 times -2 times -5. -4 times -2 times -5 is -40, so minus 40. And I know that 64 minus 40 is a positive. And if it's a positive square root, that means there are going to be two solutions. Okay.